Yo, what's up? This is Jay Dennis, and we're back with another Ranked and Reviewed. And today we are doing a band that I did not expect to do, but I'm very, very happy and excited that I came around to this. 51 videos into this series, and I'm still excited to be doing these and either discovering new bands or getting reacquainted with old ones that once made me quite happy. And that's very much the case with today's band, which is The Devil Wears Prada. Now, if you want to skip straight to the ranking, just check the timestamp either in the comments or wherever. You can scroll along the video. But I like to give a little background into some of these bands so that you guys can know where I'm coming from. Devil Wears Prada, it was one of those bands with, metalcore with some post-hardcore elements that, got a high-pitched vocalist that clean sings, and then, of course, you got a nasty, harsh vocalist, Mike Haranka. I listened to them actively from my junior year of high school, which was 2008, on the heels of their first two albums, and then pretty much actively up until 2013. 818 was where I started to fall off and started to listen to some other genres, more so mostly like nu metal and other stuff I was more into at the time. So for the most part, their first 5 albums I was familiar with back when they were, relevant. But last couple of albums and EPs that had come out did not get reacquainted with or know much about them at all up until these last couple of weeks. And damn it, have I had fun. So you're going to notice something a little different with this graphic if you're actually watching the slideshow. But for those who can't see it and you're just listening to it, I don't just have their 7 studio albums posted here. I also have their 3 EPs. I'm doing something a little different here today. I am going to rank their 7 albums, but I'm also going to rank their 3 EPs. It seems like their EPs play a huge part of their discography. Maybe some of the past bands I've done that could be said, but Devil Wears Prada seems to be doing a lot of EPs, and their EPs are usually fire. They're usually pretty popular and probably highly regarded as some of their best work. So I'm going to rank those as well after the albums, and then I'm going to do my top 10 songs, which will probably be a blend of studio albums and EP tracks, maybe some singles. We'll see. So I'm very happy to be back at this. This came out a little differently than I thought it would, that I hoped it would. There's going to probably be a twist or turn in there that may excite you, might enrage you. We'll have to see. But before I get into this ranking and all the sentimental value that's attached to a few of their albums, something special about this band is the vocalist, Mike Haranka, again, the harsh vocalist, even though he has been taking on more clean vocals over time, spoken word stuff too, in the more recent work. He's the vocalist I get compared to the most for my screaming. I haven't done a lot of active screaming in a while. I haven't recorded a song in a few years, but I'm going to give you guys a little sample of some of my solo work, and you can decide for yourself if I sound like Mike Haranka, even a little bit. Hold on. And listen to the difference between the highs and the lows. Yeah, so that is some solo work I did back in 2012. That song's called Meanwhile in Denmark. Again, those kind of high, squawky parrot vocals, the highs, and then just those nasty guttural lows. I usually look to Mike as a inspiration and a little bit of a justification on how I sounded. So decide for yourself whether I sound like him or not. He's obviously a better screamer than I am. But that's where I drew influence from at one point, and still thoroughly enjoy all of them, all the band members to this day. So, like I said, junior year of high school, was into Dear Love and mostly the Plagues album, and then listened to them for a few years after that. So I've never seen them live, but I was getting into them during the peak of their popularity, or like the start of their popularity, again, during like the MySpace era. The end of the 2000s and stuff like that. So very happy to see that these guys have been putting out solid material all this time, been experimenting in some very good ways. Really no tied albums here. The spread, though, between the weakest album and my favorite album is actually a 7.6. That's the lowest album, and then the highest album is a 8.7. So as much as I enjoyed Devil Wears Prada, not one of my favorite bands, but there are a handful of favorite songs that I really have, and I really do enjoy listening to them. So let's go ahead and get into it. At the bottom spot is their most recent album, The Act, from 2019. Again, I got no issues with them experimenting or trying some new things, but out of basically 12 rateable tracks, I only enjoyed 4 of them. The other songs are either okay, or there's actually 2 or 3 on here that might be Devil Wears Prada's worst songs. The best tracks on the album are the closing track, Spiderhead. That's the only song that actually sounded like an actually fleshed out real song. As Kids, I enjoyed that one. The Thread was nice and heavy. I enjoyed the music video also. And then the second track, Lines on Your Hands, is also solid. But some of the other tracks, or some of the singles, like Chemical or Please Say No, Numb, I don't know. I couldn't get into this album. They did some weird storytelling, non-traditional song structures here. I got, again, no issue with them going softer in some areas, but I just don't think it was executed very well. It's not like acoustic stuff. It's just weird, weird pacing and weird, disjointed, non-heavy, non-breakdown related stuff, which they did better in other albums. Isn't It Strange, even though I did not like those songs. I put them down as okay. Those were actually 6 songs. Okay, I can kind of listen to it, but they're not good songs. I've seen some people say oh wow, this is some of the best work they've done. Here's the thing about The Act that I will give it, though. They start to break ground on what would soon be their more recent material that I hold in much higher regard. But the Act album is an album that I will probably never listen to again from front to back. It just did not grow on me. I listened to it a few times. Every album I've listened to either several times throughout my life, or the ones I was less familiar with, I listened to them a couple times to get acquainted with them. But The Act just was not my cup of tea at all. And it's easily my least favorite album from them. Next up, at the number 6 spot, is their first album, Dear Love, A Beautiful Discord. I originally thought this was going to be their weakest album because sometimes that first album is just unrefined. It's not bad, but it's basically showcasing what might be to come. I think it might have been produced or recorded by Joey Sturgis, but this just is not one of the better sounding albums that they've done. Of course, Dogs Can Grow Beards All Over is a kind of a classic. I enjoyed the mostly instrumental closing track, Salvation, and Modify the Pronunciation. Other than that, and Swords, Dragons, and Diet Coke. Solid tracks there, but other than that, all the other songs are kind of just forgettable, raw, nothing really special there. Guitar tones aren't particularly great. Mike sounds fine. The vocals sound just fine, but just the music is a little cluttered and disjointed and just not refined yet. A little too raw and unproduced at this point. Sometimes that sounds good, depending on the band, but for this particular thing, even back then, in high school and beyond, I didn't listen to that album too much. Just a couple key tracks, but the album's aged about as well as it could have. It didn't age like wine. It just basically is what it was. So that's the number 6 spot, Dear Love, A Beautiful Discord. It is definitely better than The Act, though, considering it's their first release, and The Act is 7 albums deep and didn't deliver as well. So I can forgive Dear Love and say that it's actually better. Number 5 spot. Probably going to get some flack for this one, but it's their 2013 release, 818. I've noticed a lot of people hold this album in high regard, and to me, from this album forward, this is where all the albums are great. These are all albums I can listen to from front to back and enjoy. But 818, I don't like the guitar tone. I don't like how round and non-crunchy it is. It's just a really boring guitar tone. It's cool that they got a little bit more melodic and a little bit more experimental here. This is where they started to break maybe some new ground and try some new things that weren't like traditional metalcore. They got a little melodic and pretty with like 818 and I think Care More, stuff like that. And that all sounds fine. That all sounds good. My favorite track from back then, because even back in 2013 I had a hard time getting into this album, was the closing track, In Heart. But a couple other solid tracks are First Sight. That's a cool chorus. I do enjoy it. Black and Blue, Transgress. Even though it's a bit recycled, it sounds like a B-side of Dead Throne. Sailor's Prayer is pretty cool. War is one of the better songs in the album also. And yeah, just 818 just sounds a little bit recycled. It doesn't sound like they're breaking a whole lot of new ground except for where they try different genres and different sounds. But overall, out of all the better Devil Wears Prada albums, this one is my least favorite among them. But it did get better with each consecutive listen. When I went to listen to it again for the first time, I was really turned off by it. But with a couple of additional listens, I found the opening tracks like Gloom and Rumors to be pretty solid tracks, and then started to enjoy a few more tracks like Martyrs and Number 11. And yeah, 818, I was actually on the fence about buying it back then, but I don't know if it would have had the same impact on me as, say, their first couple of albums that originally got me into them. So that's what currently sits at the number 5 spot, is their 2013 release, 818, with the top tracks being In Heart, War, and I guess Black and Blue. All right, let's move on. All right, the number 4 spot is an album I was not familiar with up until recently, and that is 2016's Transit Blues. They really refined their sound and took some of the more experimental tones here to a whole different level. It's a much more palatable album to listen to. It's more friendly to the ear compared to 818. And holy shit, if they had maintained the heaviness and the beautiful brutality and really well executed experimentation that were in those middle tracks, this is one of those albums that's really awesome in the middle. If they had maintained that quality in tracks like Flyover States, Detroit Tapes, and The Condition, which are like my 3 favorite tracks off this album, this could have been their best album. There are other solid tracks, of course, the single Daughter, which I think back in 2016 when it came out, I did watch that music video, and at the time, I was all about nu metal, I was all about other stuff. Devil Wears Prada, I really wasn't into them, so I probably just blew that off. But it's actually a really great song. I really enjoy it. I also really enjoy the music video. I like Mike's performance in it. The outro to Key to the Evergreen is extremely beautiful. Submersion's and also a beautiful song. And then the closing track, Transit Blues, is so fucking heavy. Just that main riff. Overall, it probably sounds like I don't have a lot to say about it, but I actually do hold this album in high regard. It's probably one of my new favorite albums that I've gotten into recently, and one that I definitely slept on for the last 5.5 years. It came out in 2016. In some regards, it's darker and it's slower. This is where the vocal performance really starts to get into that more modern sound that I'm really starting to enjoy. I think Mike's might be starting to do more spoken word here, and it sounds really good. And I think Jeremy, the clean vocalist, might be starting to do some more like low singing, which he sounds great when he sings in his high register, but I'm really starting to enjoy hearing him in his lower register, and he starts to do that here, I believe. And I think this is the first album where they introduced some new guitar players, or at least a new lead player. And they sound incredible. The licks that are on Praise Poison sound great. Same thing with Daughter. Even though Worldwide's not my favorite song, I'd be lying if I didn't say that it wasn't a catchy chorus. I want to be close to you, Tokyo, however it goes. The only song that was a little weak, even though it probably had some significant meaning behind it, was Lock and Load. But other than that, and Home for Grave Part 2, I couldn't really get into that song. I don't know what the reference was to the previous Home for Grave on 818. I don't know what the relation was. But beyond that, out of the other 11 tracks, 9 of them are solid. And again, Flyover States, Detroit Tapes, Condition, my favorite songs, especially The Condition. I love finally hearing them play in C sharp minor. They sound incredible. And then Daughter and Transit Blues, heavy, beautiful tracks right there. So Transit Blues sits beautifully at the middle. And now let's get to the top three, which may or may not be the golden age of Devil Wears Prada. We'll see here. And these top three are somewhat tightly contested, but they are marginally better than each other. So a little surprised how this turned out, but let's get into it. The number 3 spot, we have their 2011 release, Dead Throne. A lot of albums that came out in 2011 were either the soundtrack to a high point in my life or a very drama-filled low point, because latter part of 2011 was a difficult time of my life. But Devil Wears Prada's Dead Throne definitely was a soundtrack to some better parts. So, if we're looking just at studio albums, nope. I'm trying to determine, is this their heaviest album? I don't think it is. I think it's like a close second. What I like about Dead Throne, and I had to confirm this, I'm like, wait a second. The more that I learn about the metalcore scene, and I hear a certain influence here and there, I have to go check something. This album was produced by Adam Deutsch from Killswitch Engage. Like, it's so fucking obvious. You can tell when Adam D from Killswitch Engage produces something, even if it's a band that you think that there'd be like no relation to. The riffs on this album are nasty. What they did was they took the heaviness from Plagues and the more refined songwriting structures and catchy choruses from With Roots Above and melded it into what they would probably call their heaviest album at the time. They tried to take the brutality from their first Zombie EP and then make a full album out of it with Dead Throne, even though Dead Throne wasn't about the apocalypse. It was about other themes and stuff like that. So Dead Throne is a very enjoyable album. I really enjoyed listening to it back in the day. I can't believe it's already like almost 11 years old. But it opens with Dead Throne, which is a heavy-ass track. Some of the songs don't even have clean vocals, like R.I.T., Dead Throne. One of the best tracks on the album is actually Kansas, which is actually a very beautiful instrumental. My favorite song, though, is Constance. That fucking outro with Tim LaBessis from As Lay Dying. That ending breakdown with those nasty pinch harmonics in between. Like, songs that were like my favorite back then are still my favorite now from particular albums. Untittled, back for the 4th time around. It's still beating every word. Like, you feel the sense of urgency with this album. Like, I love it. And then they finally introduced Drop A with Mammoth. What's the other song? Pretenders, another awesome Drop A track. Beautiful, heavy riffs. But I don't know. I feel like even though this is their 3rd best album, and it's very enjoyable to listen to, I don't feel like it has the same potency throughout that maybe the top 2 albums have. I do enjoy the outro breakdown to My Questions, even if the chorus is a little repetitive. The pre-chorus to Born to Lose, that guitar riff and that screaming, I adore you. I think maybe just a couple of the choruses and some of the melodies might have sounded a little bit recycled, but the guitar riffing overall was solid, even in some of your more, not generic, but just less exciting tracks like Vengeance. Chicago was a little bit of a kind of slowed down the pacing for me a little bit, but it's still a solid track. Forever Decay is the superior Drop C song on the album compared to Vengeance, with some pretty nasty riffs. You can hear that Killswitch Engage influence or that Adam D influence. And then a song that I enjoyed more today than I did back then is the closing track, Hold Fast. Great guitar work and just great closing track that really caps off the heaviness and the beauty of this album. So, number 3 spot, Dead Throne. Number 2, marginally better, is the sophomore success Plagues from 2007. Basically the album that got me into them. And the only physical album that I own. I bought it for $5 at the Rise Records tent at Warped Tour one year, so I got the special edition. But I put the actual fucking original album title here on the screen, or album cover rather. This is their heaviest album. This is Mike Hronka's best vocal performance. And he never sounds like this again, really. As I don't think he sounded like this on Dear Love. But just his highs sound far more intense. His lows are more pig squealy and just disgusting. So even though the songwriting isn't quite as refined, it's a little bit clunkier, more breakdown, more rhythm heavy. The guitar riffs are still heavy. There's still even some like deathcore elements sprinkled into the general metalcore sounding album. And I like how the synth and the keyboards sit in the mix. This is the last album really that features them on such like a almost front and center level. I mean, yeah, you hear them on future albums, but they're just not as loud and proud. This whole album is loud and proud. Like the guitars sound great. It's just another classic heavy ass drop D album, much like Under Oath's Define the Great Line. Just a beautifully heavy drop D album that's just heavy, chuggy, awesome. Some of my favorite tracks are on here, and I'd probably my most favorite studio tracks are on here, like Reptar, King of the Ozone, with just that pinch harmonic, those main riffs. HTML Rules, dude, basically the song that got me into them. Hey John, What's Your Name Again? Has aged. I actually enjoy that song more today than I did back then. The opening track just is so fucking heavy. Goats on a Boat. Least favorite tracks are You Can't Dink and Drance and Nichols is Money Too, but they're still solid tracks. The heaviest song that they probably ever written, sans any tracks that are all screaming, Scorpion Deathlock. Heavy fucking track with a lot of guitar effects, a lot of pinch harmonics, a lot of like other harmonic scrapes and shit like that. Chugs are just really well done. Very iconic piano intro and songs like this song is called, the fucking feature of Craig Owens of Chiodos and You Can't Spell Crap Without C. Just a lot of memorable guitar hooks and of course vocal hooks, and just again, just the intense difference between Mike's highs and lows are highlighted so well in this album. So Plagues is easily, I thought it was going to be their best album. It almost was. But once again, another band with an insanely good sophomore success. Really capitalized on the heaviness of Dear Love, and they just doubled down on it, got better production, and got better as musicians. So that's my take, is Plagues has aged extremely well, still very enjoyable to listen to. And for a snapshot in time with 2007, this is definitely one of the crown jewel albums of that era. And to cap it off at the number 1 spot, we have With Roots Above and Branches Below. That was like the part from like Sassafras. So I was surprised, man. This album is actually the most sentimental one to me, and probably regarded by many Devil Wears Prada fans as their best album to this day. So probably some sort of consensus there in the community. But just compared to what they've done recently and what they would do and double down on the heavier stuff like Dead Throne and other albums, I'm surprised Roots Above actually got this high. But the reason it did is just because the album flows perfectly. It never lets up. It starts big. It never slows down. It maintains consistency throughout. It's aged very well. I thought it was just going to be another album that I liked at the time, but then I grew out of. But I'm like, no, to this day, I'm actually hearing some things that I might have missed before. I thought it was just another breakdown album. No, there's actually some pretty solid guitar work in this album. Great metalcore work and some great lead work as well. And the tracks that I probably would have deemed weaker back then, like I Hate Buffering or Lord Zeno, sound a lot better today. There's just a lot of memorable choruses on here. Every song is memorable to me, and it was one of the major soundtracks to me graduating high school. I graduated high school the summer of 2009. It was all about Devil Wears Prada with Roots Above and Chimera's Infection, Suicide Silence's No Time to Bleed, Killswitch Engage's second self-titled album, and there's definitely some other albums in there, but with Roots Above was definitely the soundtrack to a very good time in my life, and the sentimental value definitely helps, but objectively speaking, it's just a very well-written album. And again, One of my favorite tracks is on this song, Sassafras. I love that opening track. It's their best opening track, hands down. It has a similar structure to Goats on a Boat, actually. It's just like heavy for like the first 2 minutes, but then like that closing like clean chorus or bridge come in. And it's just, very well written. They introduced drop B. So over the years, they introduced more and more lower tunings. With Roots Above was when they first introduced drop B. You heard it in Assistant to the Regional Manager, which at the time, I did not watch The Office, so I did not know what the fuck that meant. This is back when they used more funny song titles. Apocalypse. Great chuggy drop B riff with some solid guitar work in there, and then it leads beautifully into their other best track, Gimme Half, with that amazing piano opening. So, like I said, it's got the hooks and the piano features and the synth features that like Plagues did, but they kind of just toned it back a little bit and they refined it, kind of smoothed out some of the edges a bit, but they still maintained the heavy, and they just put out a beautifully well executed album here. A lot of people love Louder Than Thunder, just that, that beautiful piano track with Jeremy singing the whole time. Not one of my favorite songs, but it is still a great song. I still get the popularity of it, and for them to put a ballad out like that was awesome. The fucking breakdowns in like Big Wiggly style, Danger Wild Man, like you can't forget those songs. And then like Des Moines has such a great chorus with the guitar work, with the screaming verses, and then of course the beautiful chorus. Then same thing with like Ben Has a Kid, which has one of the most uplifting sorry, my bulldog's farting up a storm over here. Uplifting choruses. Ben Has a Kid. And yeah, I Hate Buffering. Similar song structure to Sassafras. Front heavy, and then it gets really catchy when Jeremy starts singing with like some great high-end guitar work going on over there. So Roots Above is their best album. Again, it didn't run away with it, but it aged super well, and it's still now I can listen to from front to back really easily. It might not be the one that I do the most, but objectively speaking, it's their best work thus far. But with some of these EPs I'm about to get into, we might be, when you look at the top three of what I just talked about with Devil Wears Prada, you would see Plagues, Roots Above, and Dead Throne as like maybe the golden age of Devil Wears Prada, the late 2000s to early 2010s, that 4-year span. But there might be something going on in more recent years that's actually showing that Devil Wears Prada's best years might still be ahead of them. So before I get into the EPs, let me recap the albums real quick from least favorite to most favorite. The Act, Dear Love, 818, Transit Blues, Dead Throne, Plagues, and With Roots Above and Branches Below. So let's fucking do the 3 EPs now. We got the Zombie EP from 2010, the Space EP from 2015, and then Zombie 2 from 2011. Basically giving us a little extra candy every 5 years. Thanks, guys. So my least favorite EP is the Space EP. The spread between my least favorite and most favorite is an 8.2 up until a 9. The Space EP is great for what it did. I like the atmosphere and the ambiance and the music videos they put out for it. Planet A is solid. It gets better with Alien and Moon God. Supernova is a little recycled for my taste, not one of my favorite courses ever written. And then Asteroid Headed to Earth has got some solid guitar riffing. But here's the thing, really nothing weak on this album, but nothing spectacular. But the EP itself is definitely more enjoyable to listen to than maybe some of their weaker albums. But really nothing groundbreaking here, except for like the atmosphere and just like the sense of like maybe you're in space and some of the themed lyrics. But like, I didn't feel like they really did anything exciting here, except if you weren't a huge fan of what they did with 818, they did come back and maybe do some of their more traditional sounds with this particular EP. But it is my least favorite one, although still enjoyable to listen to if you're a Devil Wears Prada fan. The number 2 spot, I might get some flack for this. It's the first Zombie EP, sitting at an 8.7 out of 10. Really fucking brutal album. Super popular when it came out. I remember I enjoyed it. Out of the 5 songs, I might have really enjoyed like 2 or 3 of them. Some of the choruses and like Outnumbered or Survivor. Just sometimes the choruses or the Jeremy parts can make or break the song. So if his performance isn't at a high level, then the album kind of suffers a little bit, even though he's a solid vocalist. It's just a preference thing. But Zombie EP, they really fucking doubled down on the heaviness, man. It's just entirely a drop B album. Escape is heavy. Mike Ronka's vocals sound like they took a little bit of a shot here. He sounds a bit squawkier compared to like with Roots Above. And then they got better again in Dead Throne. This album came up between those 2 albums. Or sorry, this EP came up between those 2 albums. But in hindsight, it actually aged really well. Escape is an excellent opening. The fucking chainsaw opening of Anatomy, which is the best song on the album, maintains it through with just the breakdowns, just the heavy riffing and the tremolo picking. Like, you can't fuck with the heaviness of this album. And then again, Revive is also a solid track. So in hindsight, Zombie EP aged really well. Definitely a fun album. Definitely an awesome theme going about it. And again, what did they do? They fucking doubled down on it, changed the theme a little bit, and have released what is probably their best material thus far with my favorite EP, their most recent work from last year, Zombie 2. Holy shit. If Devil Wears Prada continues this, they're in the golden years. They are doing absolutely everything right now. And I'm trying to remember, did they introduce it in the act? Did they introduce drop G sharp? I think they did. If not, Zombie 2, man. Zombie 2 coming in with some fucking chugs and some Meshuggah sounding. Like with fucking Forlorn and like Nora sounding like Meshuggah and chuggy as fuck. I think I like Zombie 2 so much because it's got like notes of Architects or like Northlane in there. Like, they sound really fucking good. Like, they either drew influence from them, and then of course they stapled their classic Devil Wears Prada sound to it. Mike sounds incredible. Jeremy sounds awesome singing in that lower register. I fucking think they sound awesome in that low ass tuning. So welcome Devil Wears Prada to these lower tunings. You sound incredible. If you maintain this dark ass and heavy aesthetic that you've adopted with Zombie 2, and you'd make a whole album out of that, and out of these recent singles you've put out, easily going to be the best work they've ever done, bar none. Even better than what they did in the late 2000s, in my professional opinion. Nightfall from Zombie 2, one of the heaviest openings, with some heavy-ass low vocals going in between the clean singing. Just the dynamics between the heavy and the clean, which is so much darker and grittier and heavier. And then again, you got Forlorn with, them singing about the pandemic. It's just really powerful. Just anytime a band wrote something meaningful about what we've been fucking going through for the last 2 years, it means a lot. This album really hit hard to me. I could really feel the rage and really feel the emotion behind it. And I just think it was really cathartic. Termination's another super heavy, awesome song. All the songs got like an 8.8 or higher. Nora's a beautiful song that's heavy as shit. And then my favorite track is Contagion, which has some of the nastiest, heaviest guitar riffs I've ever heard from Devil Wears Prada. And I'm just super excited that they've done this. Easily the best EP. It doesn't shit on the first Zombie EP, but it definitely improves upon it. So real quick, Space EP, Zombie 1, then Zombie 2. From least favorite to most favorite, Zombie 2 fucking runs away with it. Great job, boys. Now, let's get into my top 10 tracks from Devil Wears Prada, and then we'll close up the video. Top 10 tracks, which will feature studio albums and EPs. Nora, The Condition, Contagion, Anatomy, Wapocalypse, Give Me Half, Constance, HTML Rules Dude, Sassafras, and Reptar King of the Ozone. And what's that? You want to hear that twist that I mentioned at the top of this video? Their latest 2 singles, Sacrifice and Watchtower, are my new favorite songs from them. Hands down. If they continue this sound that they started with Zombie 2 And these recent singles, Sacrifice and Watchtower, if they make an album out of that, it's going to be the best album they've ever done. I think Devil Wears Prada are in their fucking prime right now, much like Memphis May Fire. When they put out a couple singles last year, some of the best material I've heard from them. Devil Wears Prada, same thing. I know that I did top 10 tracks, and I threw those last two in there, more like top 12. But the top two are the two new singles they've put out. Watchtower and Sacrifice shan't be fucked with. Again, with the drop G, the really brooding and like heavily emotional power between the clean vocals of Jeremy Now and the drop G tuning, and just the heavy ass guitar playing. It sounds so fucking good, and Mike sounds incredible. So I'm a huge Devil Wears Prada fan again. I've really enjoyed getting back into them, and I'm really excited to see what they continue to put out. And God forbid they don't. They got an insanely good legacy behind them. So those are my opinions, guys. Again, generally speaking, I enjoy all their work. Maybe not so much their last album or their first album, but whatever. A lot of their material is incredible. So be sure to comment what you agree with, disagree with. What are your favorite tracks? Do you have any good memories of them? Do you prefer a certain era or sound from them? How would you rank them differently? Whether it's the albums or the EPs, just let me know. Subscribe, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Peace!